pastor's wife, I think, probably is the hardest job in the world. Judy, you know, she's been along for the ride for 30-some years now.
Shortly after Rich and I were married, I got a name that I'm quite proud of. This young lady, a little girl, she was about 7, was walking across the parking lot of the church, and she came running after me saying, "Mrs. Pastor, Mrs. Pastor." And so that has been a name that I've treasured. We've laughed about it because Rich will say, "Well, you do it." And I said, "Well, you're the pastor. I'm only Mrs. Pastor." You know, so.
She's been a real partner the whole time, and she's done everything when it comes to working, you know, in the church, and we've done a lot of things together. Most things we do together. We laugh a lot together. We do a lot of things together. We love to travel together, and so it's been she's been a real blessing, not only for me personally, but in terms of my work as a pastor as well.
We've laughed through lots of stuff. And anybody that knows Rich knows that you have to laugh because he just sees to it that you do. He likes to cut up and have fun, and he's just a good man. Good man.
A dogwood tree grew on the hill, petals white and pure. From a thick trunk a cross was formed across our Lord endured. He was nailed on that dogwood cross as sky turned black his cold. He gave his life for all our sins, he died to save our souls.
I grew up in Lynn, Kansas, on a farm just outside of town, and my parents were active members of Zion Lutheran Church in Lynn. It was a fairly large congregation, also had a parochial day school, so I attended 8 years of the parochial day school. No kindergarten. I always say that's why it took me longer to get through school, because we didn't have kindergarten when I went to school. But anyway, we had just 2 teachers in the school. Mrs. Bergerman was the taught 1 through 4. Mr. Gunther was the principal, and he taught the upper grades. And we had athletics. We played softball. We played the elementary school softball team there in town and things like that. But that was our life. Our social life, though, very much revolved around the church. I always tell the story that when I was in the 7th grade, our neighbor down the road said, "Well, what are you going to do when you grow up?" And I always remember telling him, "Well, I'm going to farm, of course," but I always tell everybody that I knew at that time that was a lie. I really didn't think I was going to farm or wanted to farm, but I was encouraged to join FFA. I did. I became active. I was on the 4-H land judging team that won the nationals down in Oklahoma City. And but after that, after high school, I went directly into the Army. I served in the Army. I was a drill sergeant in the U.S. Army Reserves. I was in the first class that we wore the drill sergeant hats. So that's my story there. And some people say I still talk like one today. Anyway, but that's I love the military. I love some of the routines of the military, still do. And I know some of the things I learned in the military still stick with me today. But anyway.
Well, I was born on April 20th, 1945 in Bluefield, West Virginia, at the Bluefield Sanitarium. My parents, Bob and Opal Hart. On the day I was born, my father was working for West Virginia Armature at the time, and he took a leave of absence to take my mom to the hospital to have me. And when he died at age 74, he used to joke that he was still on that leave of absence because he started his business, Hart Electric, in Bluefield, officially the day I was born. My dad called one afternoon and told Mom he needed to get away. Let's get him ready and we'll take off for the beach and we'll drive down to Myrtle Beach tonight. Well, my grandmother was there, and so she was helping my mom get me ready, and so she volunteered to wash my hair. And My mom used to lay me out on the counter in the kitchen and, you know, put your head over the sink and wash it that way. And my mother used to rinse my hair with vinegar to get all the soap out, was the theory back then. And so my grandmother, in helping, she grabbed the cooking oil and rinsed my hair in cooking oil. And it was, I used to kid her until she died. That was our joke, is that if I didn't act good, she was going to rinse my hair in cooking oil again. So, but that still makes tears come to my eyes, because it was just a special thing with Nanny and I. So we lived in Bluefield until I was 12. And then my dad retired for the first time, and we moved to Fort Myers, Florida. And I went through high school there, and I met my first husband there. He was my high school sweetheart, Dick Wiggins, and he and I were married. And when Rick and Ange came along and started school, we were active in PTA, and I was Girl Scout leader, and very active in the community and our homeowners association. And so I jokingly say that that's when my professional volunteerism started.
You know, God kind of had to hit me in the head with a 2x4 before I went for my second career. I had a change in my life and my lifestyle, and I was single again, so I decided it's time to go back to school. Our church requires that before you enter the seminary, you have to know your Greek and Hebrew. You have to have a working knowledge of it, let's put it that way, or you can't get accepted at the seminary. So I took my Greek and my Hebrew in college before I ever got to the seminary. After the first year of seminary, one of the professors asked me what I was going to do for the summer. He said, well, how about going to St. Pete, Florida? He said, as what he called it, what was a summer vicarage or internship. And I said, I remember asking him, do I have to know Spanish? Oh no, he said. And anyway, so I went, and I spent the summer down there. But the next summer I came back because my regular internship or vicarage didn't begin until September in Red Bud, Illinois, which is a little town about 60 miles outside of St. Louis. And as I think about that it was probably good.
We were PTA presidents and church council and all of that, and in 1982 he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. We went through very aggressive treatment, and he died in 1983. So I had a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old, and thought the bottom had fallen out of my world and that my life was over. And my children, for off and on during that first year, we traded roles. They were the parents sometimes when I would just lose it. But the Lord got us through it, and then he put this funny-looking preacher in my life, and it was awesome.
God had a good plan, because what happened was I met Judy. Even though I'd known her before, I met her then at that time, and she was working with the youth. That was one of the things I did, working with the youth, and we started dating, and I guess, as they say, the rest is history. But anyway, she said, I'm not going to marry you until you have a job. So, but she said that kind of tongue-in-cheek. But anyway, I went back to seminary, finished by a year, was ordained shortly after I graduated from seminary at the congregation where I did my internship, which was St. John's Lutheran in Red Bud, Illinois. We were engaged, and we got married after I graduated from seminary.
I often say that I was so blessed with a fabulous first life, and then I've had an awesome second life. And I think being a preacher's wife has been a different journey. In fact, when I told my friends in St. Pete, where I lived when Rich and I were married, when I told them I was marrying Rich, they couldn't imagine that I was going to be a preacher's wife. I don't know what they thought that meant, but it was a joke between all of us that I was marrying Rich, a pastor. Well, we wanted a banner. We both felt that wherever the other one went, we would follow. And we had a friend was quite the artist, and so she designed the banner and made it for us as a wedding gift.
And of course, it's based upon Ruth, first chapter, where, Ruth says to Naomi, wherever you go, I will go. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. And
I'm sorry to say that our first church, Rich had a leak in his office, and our banner got wet and destroyed it. So, but it was quite a treasure, and it's what we've done for almost 32 years. Wherever the one went, the other one followed, or what have you. So.
We got married in June. Our first call was down at Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Gulf Breeze, Florida. God blessed us, and we had a good time there. We spent 15 years down there at Gulf Breeze. We moved the church. After a few years, the church was kind of in a residential area in the town of Gulf Breeze. It was off kind of the beaten path, and so we had outgrown our facilities. We decided, I convinced the congregation, we voted, they said yes. Judy said I was crazy, but we voted yes to relocate. And, we didn't have much money, but that was our decision. And then we kind of had a little dedication thing that we set the ground apart for the building of the church. And I know the contract wasn't all done yet. Judy said, "You're crazy. How can you do all this and it's not even been signed yet?" I said, "No, we'll go forward in faith," which is, I tell her that a lot. We have to go forward in faith. But, so we did that, and we built new facilities. We have a group at our church known as Laborers for Christ, and they're a bunch of older people, put it that way, a nice way of putting it, right? Older people who live in their RVs, and most of them have some kind of skill, but they came and they built our first facility. And it was a large worship area. It seated around 200 people and had classrooms and all that kind of stuff, office space. So that was and along a busy highway, Highway 98 down there in Panhandle of Florida. And from there on, after that, and a few years later, we had started a preschool. We built a new school building. It's grades, it's pre-K all the way through 5th grade. And so it's still going very strong today. And they probably have about 200 students. I'm not sure quite, but somewhere in that area in the school.
During the time that we were in Gulf Breeze, I became very involved in the hospital auxiliary volunteers and went through the offices of that and became president. And I was asked to serve on the state board, and I started that in 1995 and traveled quite a bit with that. Was in the district representative for the Panhandle of Florida, and got on the chain of command and moved my way up and became state president in 2001, which was quite an honor and quite a busy life. I traveled quite a bit through the state to visit with different hospitals and encourage volunteerism in the hospitals. This was the pin that I gave out to all the volunteers, and volunteers are like lighthouses. They're constant, reassuring, and trusted. And so that was my theme for that year as state president. And so consequently, everywhere I went, they gave me, as you can see on the wall, well, anyway, I have lots of lighthouses, which I love. And I still think, like at the Shepherd Center, the volunteers are constant, and they are reassuring, and they are very trusted. So it all comes together. It all is the same. But one of my fun stories that I always like to tell is that at my installation banquet, now it's a large banquet room, and there's 600 plus people in the room, and I'm quite nervous about my speech I've got to give. And we're up on the dais, and Rich is sitting there in his collar and his cross and looking very pious, and he had been asked to do the invocation for the meal. And he stood up to the mic and he said, "Several of you are wondering how I got to be up here at the head." He said, "I sleep with the president."
I had the call to Staten Island, New York, and St. John's Lutheran. It just seemed like a thing to do. Most people go south, when they get older. We went north to New York City, and Judy and I, we loved it. We had vowed to where we were at to make the most of the community and every opportunity. I remember well Ralph Bowman, who was the president of our church body at the time when I graduated from the seminary. I think it was at the call services where he said this in his sermon, but he quoted C.W.F. Walter, who was the first president of our church body way back when, led German immigrants over here. But he said that wherever you are and you're serving, you should consider that a little bit of paradise. A little bit of paradise. I've never forgotten that. And so I've always tried to remember that whether it's Alderson, West Virginia, or New York City, or Florida, wherever you're at, that indeed is a little bit of paradise. And so, you give God thanks for the place that it is and make the most of it. Or, as they say, bloom where you're planted. Sometimes they say that as well. So, we had a good time in Florida, and the Lord blessed us with a lot of things down there, but it was time to go to New York City, I thought, and so we accepted the call to move up there. Extremely different ministry, obviously. A large church, had about 700 members, and a large school. I grew up in a parochial school. Parochial schools are dear to my heart. The one in New York City on Staten Island had about 300 to 350 children in it, and I spent a lot of time there, a lot of my ministry there. Probably one of my biggest thrills was every Wednesday to lead chapel for all the kids. But I taught religious classes there as well in the school. So I was very involved in school. In fact, the church office is located at the school. So I suppose that's another reason I hung around there. But I enjoyed working with the kids, teachers, principal, so forth. It was during that time that we purchased a house down on the river in Alderson. I think it was furthest things from our mind that we would live in the Alderson community.
I attended Greenbrier Women's College for 1 year, and my parents had moved back to Princeton at that time, so we traveled back and forth. When we traveled back and forth, it came this way through Alderson, which was a kind of different back in those days in the 60s. So,
while we were in New York City, it kind of became a summer home for us. Judy would come down for an extended times. I would come when I could. I had the opportunity for a long weekend, something like that. We always came a week in fall and a week in spring, and to enjoy it. And it always took usually 3 weeks at least in August for vacation time. So we spent time down here, got to know the community, things like that. And one of the things I do was that there was not a Lutheran church nearby. Eventually, they sent me a call. I don't know if I would consider coming down here working part-time as a church planner, missionary, I think they called it, to the Greenbrier Valley. And so after some consideration, I said yes, and we ended up in Alderson.
And the best part about this house is that it's on that river out there, and I love my river. As I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm watching my birds out here eating on the suet, and the squirrels and all my stray cats that come up. That I became involved in Alderson Main Street, the library board, community center board, CEOSs, which I love. That was my first thing other than bridge that I got involved with, and I now serve on the state board for that, and the area rep and Greenbrier County president for the CEOSs. And my first exposure with Shepherd Center was I went up signed up for the classes. I don't think it was too long after we moved here. I think they do wonderful work, and to go on Thursdays and have lunch, and I've been doing that again this year, there's a joy in the room at lunch when you're there on Thursdays for the lunch. There's a camaraderie, a friendship, and a joy of people just interacting and laughing. And I think that is so important, especially as we grow older. We tend to be isolated, or well, in today's world, we're all on our phones and not really even looking at who's across the table from us. Then it's been fun getting Rich ready for his cooking class. Rich is an excellent cook, and he's truly a gourmet. But he couldn't do it without me because I'm the gopher. I collect. He gives me these lists. It's almost like Mission Impossible when he gives me the list. Wasn't so bad in New York and Florida, but when you live in Alderson and you don't even really have a grocery store, and he goes through and comes up with these things that I've never really even heard of and tells me to go to the store. This is what he needs. So I think my job's just as hard as his. And he certainly couldn't do it without me, and I try to remind him of that often.
For me, cooking is relaxing. I can apply some other area of my life. I enjoy it, and well, that's just what I like to do. And it's another opportunity for me to serve. You know, we've raised funds. I've helped community and schools, you know, with their fundraising, cooking for that the last couple of years, and all kinds of fundraisers, you know. We have a wide variety of things we do, you know. You know, the president of the Master Gardeners, we're active in that, you know. I'm president of the Lions Club once now down here in Alderson, and the list goes on and on. I've served all over the place, and probably one of my biggest thrills is Raynell Medical Center, serving on that board of directors, because the whole medical thing not only interests me, and the need for good medical services out here in rural West Virginia, but I enjoy, I don't know, I just enjoy the whole thing.
Rich is always giving me little things to live by, and he says that we're supposed to be the hands and feet of Jesus.
You'll never know whose lives you're going to touch, you sure don't. The reality is that it may be 10 years down the road, you know, before that seed is going to sprout and make a difference in somebody's life. You know, we just don't know, and so, you know, we just have to be, we're persistent, we keep on working, and keep on sharing the good news. That's what I say. Keep on doing it.